All right, everyone. Hey, so next step in what we're doing in the shop, we're going to be starting talking about the lathe. And one of the big things with using the lathe is the tooling that goes with it. So the first thing we're going to talk about today are our gouges. Now, we've talked about carving tools before, and there's gouges there. Lathe gouges, a little bit different. So start out, what is a gouge? Now, a gouge is any chisel that has sweep. And basically, what is sweep? Well, sweep is that curvature. Extreme example here. So any chisel basically that's in a U or has like that curvature to it, we're talking about a gouge. Now, when we're starting out, you're going to be using roughing gouges. And for years, you know, that was my go-to roughing gouge. Fairly thick material. You know, you can see it has an extremely, I'm trying to show you a little bit better, extremely steep cutting edge. You know, with our carving chisels, they're a very shallow angle. If I were to take this and try to use it like a carving chisel, you know, striking it, it wouldn't do a great job at all because it is so steep. It's not shallow. It's not going to cut well. But when we're working with, you know, the lathe here, something spinning against it, that is actually a great angle of attack. So this does a great job. It is a hair shorter, but I can get my hand on it and keep that out of the way as I'm doing my roughing pass, you know, turning something from square stock into something that's actually round, or circularized, as someone so nicely put it on the safety test a while back. This year, though, I got these new 2-inch wide roughing gouges from Hurricane Tools. So far, my opinion, really nice product. They're really heavy, really great surface area to work off of. I can really rock into my cut and sweep across as I'm working. However, one thing about this, and I've had to reiterate this a couple times, this roughing gouge, you know, I could sharpen this up like a razor, and I could actually bring that in and cut, you know, a concave pass, a cove, because you can see that this is actually round on the bottom. These new ones, they're dead square. So the only way I can actually get, you know, say an actual cove cut is if I were to lift that up. Let's see if I can get this on the camera for you, so that something was rocking against that edge. This isn't really what that's built for. There's been times of larger diameter things, you know, bigger items. Maybe I need a big sweeping curve and something. Yeah, I've tilted that up and used it in that situation. But mostly this is for, you know, getting something from the square stage to your round stage where you can start shaping it. So both do a great job. This is really one of my favorites for that job now, just for the simple fact of how much mass there is there. It does a great job at reducing that vibration. Now, the other thing, while we're talking about, you know, basic roughing, you know, this tool here. What is that? Well, you know, it's hard to see. There we go. This is called a bowl gouge. And if you look at it, you can see that it has that almost like a round shape to it. All it is a piece of round stock, like 1/2 inch round bar stock. And it's been sharpened at the end, and it has a flute ground in it, just slashed in there. What this is really nice for is you can, as you're cutting into your bowl, you roll that on its side. The bevel's going to ride the inside of the bowl, and we're going to cut with that bottom edge right in there as we cut. It does a great job for that. What I used to use a lot was what's called an Olin tool, and it's a tool usually you make yourself. It's a piece of round stock steel, but it has a hole bored in the end. And what we use is different shaped cutters, usually ground off of metal lathe, square stock cutters. Put them in the end, tighten a little set screw. Really cheap way to make a something to cut the inside of a bowl. This is actually, you know, my new favorite tool because it does such a great job when it's sharpened well of just slicing in and making a really nice finish on the inside. I've also used this for doing detail work on the outside of things. I've used it on some goose calls before just to try it. It does a great job for that too. It is a little bit long though, and that's mainly so you can brace it off yourself if you would happen to be hanging out over that tool rest pretty far. It gives you a lot of leverage there to kind of balance you out. I have a couple other gouges right here now, and these are basically the same shape. They're extremely flat gouges. You know, this one's like 1.25 inches. This one's only about 3/8 of an inch across, like a little fingernail gouge. Roughing gouges, no, you can see that this little one's super thin steel. These are more for finish work, shaping, getting a nice, this one's great for getting a nice smooth finish on the inside, like on an inside sweeping curve. This little fingernail gouge is really great for getting in and actually doing some design work, you know, small finish cuts, cleaning up something that, you know, maybe you roughed in and now you just need to kind of just shave back the material to get a nice smooth machined finish. So some basics right there as to the gouges we're going to deal with. I'm going to get a few of these out of the way so that we'll put them back in the rack so that we don't knock any off the table. Also, the chisels I'm going to be talking about here, this is by no means the only chisels that are out there to use. This isn't the only tool that could be used for, you know, whatever job we're talking about even possibly. These are the tools that I really like to use for the tasks at hand. Even different countries around the world, there's different tools. Some countries have lathe tools specific to the area, just like carving tools. There's literally hundreds, if not thousands, of different types of chisels, different, you know, shapes, different uses. The ones I have here are just things we have in the shop that I've found kind of make the job of not only bowl turning but spindle turning a little bit easier for us. So, moving on, let's talk about these two, skew chisels. You can see they're both ground at an angle. They both do the same job. This one I'm setting down is just a hair different. We're going to talk about that in a second. So to start with, you can see this is flat sides, flat edges, has an angled cut, okay? And basically what this is basically what I tell people is kind of like a hand plane for the lathe. You know, the hand plane we use in the shop is going to smooth out, really clean up things, leave a nice cut finish. Same thing with this. I can angle this as I'm cutting and slide it across. I can do shear cuts. I can actually stick it straight on if I wanted to and scrape. I've used it before to clean up tenons, you know, like a lid that's going to fit into a little vase or something like that. I can even stand it up on edge, plunge in, and then roll it to the side to get a bead, a convex curve cut onto something. It does a great job with that. Which leads me to this one. If you look, I'll hold it up to this camera. It has that nice rounded side on it. And what that lets me do is it lets me rock it on the tool rest, and it kind of just allows me to be able to have a radius surface to move this on rather than having to rock this one on the corner. Both of them work well. It's really a matter of preference. To be honest with you, I usually do use the flat side when it's just something I'm more used to. That's what I have it in my home shop. So that's, you know, for the most part how I work with when I'm working with a skew. Another group we have here, scrapers. Have everything from small ones up to some fairly large ones here. Now, we'll move these aside for the time being. These three right here, they are the same basic profile. Round nose, a round nose, and a round nose. Advantages, disadvantages. Well, obviously the smaller one, you're going to be able to do a smaller radius. So if you're doing like detail work, like I mentioned before, you know, goose call, candlestick holders, I've used this on before. Very small things like that. It's great for cutting those curves. And to be honest, even this one is too, because you can just use the very tip of that if you need to get into certain places. This one, however, I've gotten to really like this one for cleaning up bowls. You know, if we do like a little bit of a lip on the outside of a bowl, this works in there really nice for me. And the other bonus is how thick it is. You know, we can lay that one down, lay this one down. You can see the difference. This is close to 3/8 of an inch thick. Soaks up vibration very well. So it does not vibrate, doesn't shake much when you're using it, which end result leaves you with a nicer finish on your project. I'm not the biggest fan of scrapers anymore. I used to use them a lot. Now I really try to focus on, like with my bowl gouge, keeping that super sharp. So if I'm trying to scrape, so I don't have to scrape the inside of a bowl. Anymore, I really try to focus on how sharp my tools are to try to get a finish, you know, that doesn't need scraped, it doesn't need sanded. Sometimes there's no way around it. Nothing wrong with that. When I was first learning, a lot of my stuff, it looked nice just because of the sheer amount of sanding that I did to it. And now that I've worked a little bit more with this, you know, really focusing on sharpening those tools and keeping them sharp whenever you feel them get dull instead of just keeping working is going to help you minimize your scraping and your sanding. So we have those 3 round nose scrapers. We'll move those out of the way. Now, these 2, what are they? Well, these are bowl scrapers. And what I have here is I have a left-handed bowl scraper, right-handed bowl scraper. Now, the left-handed one, this is perfect for getting and cleaning up the inside of a bowl on the lathe. The bowl is spinning counterclockwise, so it is coming down off this cut edge. And you can see it's a very steep cut edge. You're just basically shearing away some material as you're scraping in there. Does a great job in the interior of a bowl. Not so great on the outside because your handle is going to be pointing at the headstock and that jaw chuck that's spinning around. So you don't want your hand anywhere near that jaw chuck. So what we also have is this right-handed scraper. Again, this one not to be used on the inside because you'd be just digging this point into the side of your bowl. Because it's spinning counterclockwise as it comes up, it would just be spinning up across the cut edge. This is for the outside, getting in, really shaping that outside of the bowl. Both of them, again, very little vibration because of that 3/8 inch thick high-speed steel. And the nice thing is, the past few years, let me see if I can find all of them that I've got from them so far. So, you know, and this is one we haven't talked about yet. All these tools here have come from what's called Hurricane turning tools. I think we buy them out of New York. I know they're, I forget where they're, I know they're not made in America, but for, you know, a shop on a budget, it's really nice. I think, you know, most of these tools are less than $50 a piece, which, you know, sometimes it seems like it's a lot of money, but when you compare them to like extreme high-end companies, that's really affordable, especially for how thick of high-speed steel you're getting. And they do hold an edge for a very long time for me. I've been very pleased with the performance that I've gotten out of these. Now, last one, I've got some more specialized tools here. We'll get these scrapers out of the way. First thing, spear point chisel. All that is, you know, comes into a point right there, obviously, and it's sharpened on both sides of the point. What this lets you do is plunge in, and A, you can cut a V groove if you want to. B, you can rotate it, rock it, and create a convex curve on something. If you put 2 of them down, you can actually make 2 V grooves that form a bead in the center of them just by rocking this back and forth. This isn't something that I use every day. In fact, it's very rare that I actually use that. My favorite tool to cut something like this is the skew, because I can go in from one side, go in from the other, and to be honest with you, I feel that I have a little bit more control rounding a bead with the skew, and I think usually it machines a little bit better. It cuts nicer when I do it with the skew. Again, that's a matter of personal preference. A lot of people I know that do turnings love the spear point chisel. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just one that I don't use very often. Another kind of a little bit more specialty one is what's called a bedan. That's a piece of square stock. In this case, it's 1/4 inch square stock. It's just sharpened on the front. It has a single bevel. And what's nice is we can use that bevel down, and we can cut tenons. Again, like lids that are going to fit inside a bowl or vase. The other thing we can do is we can flip that upside down with the bevel up and hold it at an extreme high angle. It's going to shear and slice off and make a very nice finish wherever you're using that. And I've actually even used this before to round over and finish cut a bead, because that flat edge makes it really nice for doing that. The last one I have right here, it's a parting tool. You can see there's a spine, and then there's another spine on this side. That cut edge is even with that spine. That's the highest point of the chisel, and the point behind that is when you start plunging in, a parting tool, you're cutting apart something. So as you plunge in, if this was flat on the side, that would be a lot. This is an inch across. That would be an inch on this side, inch on this side. That'd be 2 inches of metal rubbing on a piece of material that could be spinning upwards of 1,800 RPM if you're doing spindle turning. Bowls, usually under 1,000 RPM, but still, it's a lot of material that's touching there. So what's nice is with the parting tool, we have that spine there, so that's the only place that's rubbing. And as we cut in, most of the time we don't cut the whole way off, because A, it could launch the material. B, if you're cutting off something bigger, like that's a lot of heat to build up. So a lot of times if I'm trying to plunge in there, I'll actually cut part of the way, then I'll step over a little bit and cut a little bit, like make a groove that's basically 1.5 times the width of this. That way it reduces the heat a little bit. And again, not only cutting apart something, but it's also great for, in this case, you can see there's a little step there. It's great for cutting that step, a tenon, okay? So that's the last of the basic, everyday tools we're going to run into in here. Now for some extreme specialty tools. These are kind of odd. You can see there. Let me lay this down in front of it so you can see there a little better. This is called a captive ring tool. Basically what a captive ring is when you have a larger diameter piece of wood, we start reducing the center of it. Think about like a dumbbell for weightlifting. It's large on either side with a skinnier handle. What we could do, and we'll just use this as an example, I could come in this way, almost like I'm coring it, flip it around, come in the other way and meet them, and a ring would pop off and slide between the two ends of like the barbell. Okay? So, what's it used for? Mostly to show off, or as decorative. There's not usually a ton of useful uses for this. It's mostly for decoration. A lot of times you'll see people make goblets. They'll make some captive rings on the handle. One use that I use these for is baby rattles. I've made a few baby rattles before. They almost look a little bit like a hammer. And on the hammer head, I cut a couple captive rings so they slap back and forth and make the rattling noise. Can I cut captive rings without these tools? Absolutely. I've done them, again, with a skew chisel before. The only thing with a skew chisel, you have to have the room to do it. So a lot of times, a little bit larger diameter material is nice to work with when you're doing it with a skew. The other, it can be a little bit sketchy when you're driving that skew chisel to point underneath something. So it is doable with a skew chisel. I prefer to do it with these. The other thing too is this little set. You can see that extremely small hook. That's a 1/4 inch. I really don't think I would be successful cutting a 1/4 inch with that skew chisel. This one makes it really nice and fairly easy to do. I'm not going to say it's foolproof, but it's about the closest thing I've come across to being foolproof that would let me do that job. Okay, so I'm done with lathe tools. Just to wrap up, let's talk quick. Safety equipment. Safety glasses, always. With the lathe, face shield, always. So safety glasses I'm wearing to keep dust and things like that out of my eye. Face shield is to keep chunks of wood from coming off the lathe and hitting me actually in the face, because we do turn with firewood in here. It's a great cheap way to get bowl material, is old firewood. So the last protective bit I wear is my earplugs. You know, the lathe isn't a super loud tool, but the cutter on the wood, the motor itself, it can be loud. It can be kind of annoying when you're working with bowls with this long handle. You're balancing it on your arm. It is kind of close to my ear. This transmits a lot of higher frequency noise, and my ears will hurt if I don't have earplugs in. And I just like to try to save what hearing I have left. Last couple things. Layout and measurement tools. So obviously steel rule. I can do a quick measurement of diameter, quick measurement of length. It's great for just quick, rough measurements. These two, though, are my outside and inside calipers. Now, what are they used for? Well, I have this piece of round material here. So A, I can size that so that it's exactly the diameter, okay? I can get my steel rule and I can actually measure to see what diameter that is. So if I was going to use this as the lid on something, okay, so it's a little bit over 2.5 inches. I could drill a hole as close to 2.5 inches as I could, and then use one of my chisels to open that up until this just fits in it. But how would I check that? You know, I could use the lid to check it, but if I wanted to do it real quick while it was on the lathe, inside calipers come into play there. So I have these set. Actually, we'll just reset these real quick because they're a little bit too large. They're set to the inside diameter that I just measured. So now, if I was to open up the vase or something, I could lay those in to check my final diameter. Okay? So, that's all I have for you today. Hope you learned a few things. I hope we'll be back in the shop actually practicing these soon. Until next time, have a good one.